Chad Pergram's with us, Byron, New York. Let's go to Chad right now to get a rundown of what we can expect next, Chad. You know this procedure better than most.
Well, what happened here in the hearing is you had Debbie Wasserman Schultz, the Democrat of Florida, make a motion to say, we're aware of RFK Jr.'s anti-Semitic remarks. We have trouble with this. There was a coalition of 43 Democrats, who got together, wrote a letter saying that he should not be testifying, very, very concerned about some of his comments that he made last Friday in New York, basically saying that the pandemic, there was an immunity to people who were of Chinese or Jewish descent. And so what she was trying to do was get them out of the committee, go into a closed session, and debate whether or not this witness should go forward. Now, usually what happens is you have a straight up or down vote on this, or they could move to table to set this aside. And that's actually what the vote was on, not whether to continue in committee, but whether or not to actually set aside the motion made by Debbie Wasserman Schultz. So it's one step parliamentarily removed from what she was actually trying to do. And that's how you kind of put this to sleep, get this out of the way, and continue with the hearing. Usually that is a party line vote. But it was interesting, and you don't see this very often. Usually you just have people record their votes by yes or no, but you had some of the Democrats, Wasserman Schultz, you had Stacey Plaskett from Virgin Islands. She was talking about, hey, look, we want to follow the rules here. That type of language is not permitted in a House committee hearing, and we want to get off stage here and see how to proceed forward, Bill and Dana.
Okay, Chad, thank you. One other note on Wasserman Schultz. She is the first female Jewish member of Congress. And she was the one who took exception to the comments of Mr. Kennedy there. Byron, New York, join our conversation here. He started out talking about targeted propaganda. Malinformation, he believes, is a new word that's been made up to keep him quiet, because he says, quote, people don't want me to talk about inflation, the border, et cetera, et cetera. He is ready to do battle with Republican or Democratic members of Congress today during this hearing.
Well, I think we can say the hearing started exactly like we thought it would, which was with both sides bickering with each other. RFK was really pretty fascinating. He started out with a very compelling, very heartfelt defense of the First Amendment. He said we cannot talk as a nation about big issues like inflation or immigration or the war in Ukraine. You can't have a meaningful discussion about them without first having a First Amendment. And he also made sort of a reference to himself by saying the First Amendment doesn't protect the speech that everybody likes. It protects unpopular speech, like some of the things that he has said. I do think that after this very compelling beginning, he moved into a defense of himself that was less successful, and went on and on about how he was not an anti-Semite and nobody believed that he could be. Another thing that you're seeing is just this really fascinating alliances of opposites in this case. Sitting behind RFK Jr. is his campaign manager, Dennis Kucinich, longtime progressive, former member of the House, been way on the left for a very long time. And Jim Jordan and Dennis Kucinich are saying nice things about each other, and Robert F. Kennedy Jr., one of the most famous Democrats in the country, is saying nice things to Republicans. And then the Democrats are attacking them. It's just really a fascinating mashup of political alliances in this.
Byron, New York, thank you. So stand by. We have a lot more to come in this hearing. It is just getting underway.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.